What is up, guys? Welcome to a new video. Today we're checking out what is going to be strong moving into the mid-season 7.9 patch. There is a ton of stuff to cover here, but after this you're going to know the important things and nothing will catch you off guard. Plus we'll get a head start into our games. Now, top and jungle, the tank and bruiser changes are probably the biggest, so we're going to start with that, but I'll put some timestamps in the description if you want to skip to other roles. So there are 3 reworks: Sejuani, Zac, and Maokai. Sejuani, to start with, the passive is 2 parts now. So after not taking damage for a while, you're going to be immune to slows. You gain 100% armor and magic resist plus 100 of each on top, which is removed shortly after taking damage. The other part is when someone is stunned by Sejuani, her first attack or spell against them deals 10 to 20% of their maximum health, so both those are pretty strong. Your Q is the same as before. With your W, this is twice in front of her, like it applies the frost, which is a stun passive, and it also slows people. With your E, it has 2 parts. The passive, nearby melee champions can apply her frost and it lets her stun people, and the active is the stun. Her ultimate is the same kind of thing as before, stuns the first champion it hits with a skill shot, and it stuns for longer if it's thrown further. It also slows everybody around, it damages them, and a bigger slow to everybody after 2 seconds, kind of like a mini Nunuo. Overall, you are so ridiculously tanky, and you are a stun bot now, kind of like Brawl Matchy. The stun is a little bit like that, plus a stun on ultimate as well. It's pretty crazy. Her passive gives a stupid amount of resistance at the start of a fight, and her lockdown keeps her alive longer as well, so she's actually very tanky. I'd imagine that people are going to play her both top and jungle as a frontline, in my opinion. Like, the damage is not that great, but she survives literally forever. Zac is very similar. The passive is the same idea, W same idea, and so is his E. Now, the Q is a skill shot to the first target it hits, but then the second is an auto attack to slam them together and deal more damage. His ultimate has 2 casts. The first one, you go super flat, you slow, you're immune to crowd control, but you can be killed, by the way. For the second part, if you charge this for at least 1 second, you pick up enemies on top of him and it moves them nearby. If you release before that second, then you're just going to knock them up like the old ultimate. Overall, it's still the same as Zac we know and love, but now he's actually more annoying to play against. Like, his damage is down a little bit, it's less of like a spam game, and there's more thought behind what you actually want to do in team fights. I reckon he is the strongest out of these 3 reworks. He's the most fun as well, so people are going to play him the most. There's more crowd control in his kit right now and a more useful ultimate as well. Finally, the third one is Maokai, and the passive is basically the same, but it's a bigger heal with a cooldown now, which is lowered by enemy spells hitting him or if he casts a spell. Q is mostly the same, like nearby enemies are knocked up, further away are just slow. W, same idea, but it's really slow now. It roots a target and it deals damage, but it is going to be less damage, and that's because most of it has been shifted onto his E. This is the most important part of the new Maokai, and it's also why he can jungle now as well, and much better anyway. Saplings deal more damage. There's a flat part and a percentage max health and a slow. If they are placed in a brush, they last longer as well. There's a bigger explosion and double the damage over 2 seconds, which is nuts. His ultimate is basically a Nami wave, but it's going to root you and it moves a lot slower. It roots longer, by the way, based on how far it's actually traveled as well. As long as you're a little bit away from his ultimate, you can actually outrun this thing, by the way. It's super slow, and overall he's going to be a better jungler as well as a decent top laner, in my opinion. His strength now, though, is zone control, not his engage. He's not just like a root bot and that is it. He's actually really good at zoning. You're going to set up your saplings around objectives in pushes, you let them face check, and they take a crap ton of damage plus the root as well to keep them away from your ultimate. Part of the reason I say he's actually going to be a good jungler now is because, one, saplings do more from bushes, which obviously there are loads in the jungle, but also because of this change. Your Cinderhulk is now going to double the burn damage to minions and monsters as well. Now, a lot of tank junglers suck because their clear is so bad, so they get no gold. At least now with this, you're going to be farming faster, you take less damage, and you're getting more gold as well. This is probably the most underrated thing in this entire patch. Everybody has missed this, but all Cinderhulk tank junglers just got a buff here to make them a bit more viable. I'm talking about champions like Nunu, Volibear, Gragas, Rammus, maybe even someone like Malphite, like slow clearers, but they are tanks, right? Their job is to engage and tank stuff. Now, if we move on to items for this kind of class, I guess, like the first one is the new item Adaptive Helm. The big thing is really the passive. When you take damage from a spell or effect, it reduces all damage from that same spell by 15% for 4 seconds. I can't really find a good situation for this, honestly. Like, maybe against a brand burn or something. Maybe I'm missing something. I have no idea, but I don't feel like this will get used very much. The other new item, Gargoyle Stoneplay, though, is freaking ridiculous. This is much better. We're going to see it on almost all tanks, in my opinion, as a core item. If you're around people, right, it's 80 armor and magic resist plus 100% increased health. Even if you deal 60% less damage, who cares? You're going to survive for so long. This is the ultimate tank item, and it doesn't even cost that much, which is the ridiculous thing. I'd even expect this on tank support soon, if I'm honest, at least engaged ones. Like, it's a pure defensive item though, okay? It's not that good on bruisers. You can't really abuse it that well, but it is great on crowd control focused champions who just want want to engage and they don't care if they do less damage. Can you imagine if you are a Zed and you jump onto someone with a death mark and they proc this thing, they get 80 armor and magic resist from the item anyway, and they have 100% increased health? How are you going to kill that? Abyssal Scepter is different, but similar to before. So it's a tank item now though. No AP on it, but health and magic resist. You're looking at either champions who do heavy magic damage themselves but want some defense, a Mumu, Galio, Malphite maybe, or full tanks who are playing with an AP heavy team. Honestly, more likely going to be the second one. This is a supportive item now more than anything. You buy this to help others more than yourself. There are a lot of tank item changes this patch, okay, but I'm not going to go through all of them. Basically, you're seeing most defensive items follow the same pattern. They're going to have less health, but more armor or magic resist depending on whatever they have on the item. It just means that you have to build for what you're against more. Health is good against both physical and magic, but now you've kind of got to choose more. There are a few bruiser things though, like Serix is so much better now as well, like more damage and in theory a bigger shield is based on your bonus now from items. As long as you have some health from items, this should end up being worth still. Like 10% more base AD is going to feel really good, especially with the Trinity Force as well. Door and Shield is slightly better. It's a starting item that's aimed more for tanks or bruisers now, I think. Well, it was anyway, I guess. It's basically like a constant steady heal though if you're being harassed. It's not major, but it is going to be better and more viable now at least. So what does that actually all mean for the top lane and for the jungle? Now in theory, I think bruisers should be stronger now. Ironic because it's a tank patch, but actually they can get a bit more defense to complement their damage and not die instantly. I'd imagine champions like Darius, Jax, Irelia, Yorick, Kled, and Yasuo would all feel better about these changes, and they're also going to get free lanes against the tanks. With that being said though, tanks like Malphite, Sion, and Galio, who do have a bit of damage, will be coming back a lot more I think as well, because these items just make them so tanky. Other tanks will come back as well for sure, both in jungle and top lane actually, but as a team it shouldn't be too bad to face. They're going to be building a little bit more specifically now, remember, so either to stop magic or physical, which means at least your mid lane or your AD carry should be able to do some damage if the other can't. I will say one thing though, full AD teams are pretty screwed now. I definitely would not recommend AD top, mid, jungle, and bot lane. You're going to have a really sad game. So for the mid lane, the only direct change is to Banshee's Veil, which is now replacing the Abyssal Scepter basically. This is going to be your, okay, I'm in trouble and I need some defense item for a mid laner. Now the only issue is it doesn't build out of a Negatron Cloak, it's just a null magic mantle. Even that will help a little bit, but it's so much more of a defensive item than Abyssal was. Like you'd want this third at least, I think, if you're a mobile and you kind of need the safety. With that being said though, if you are a mobile, if you have like damage you just need to stay alive and use it, this is probably better than Abyssal. Basically what I'm trying to say is it's a nerf for champions like LeBlanc, Ahri, Syndra, who probably wanted the 10% bonus and to kind of dive into fights. It's a buff though to champions who wanted to stay at the back, like Lux or Xerath or Orianna, who wanted to stay away but just have some magic resist and not die as fast. Overall for the role, I think poke is going to be better. It might be a bit dumb, but actually poke beats tanks. You bypass the tanks, they can't block the spells, and you can get to the champions they are protecting. As I just said as well, Banshees is so much better for these guys, so they are going to be a bit stronger like these mages, I guess. Ahri and LeBlanc will probably be a bit worse, like tanks get in the way and kind of stop them going in as easily. Like you have to remember, fragile, low health mages are actually hard to play versus tanks with a lot of crowd control who can lock them down. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if we saw more Vel'Koz, Swain, and Anivia, who kind of fit into this general type of meta as well. We did a video yesterday about AD carries, so you can check that for what builds will actually look like, but still in general there are kind of like a group of things that are getting changed. Crit items are going to be cheaper, double attack speed is going to be better with Shiv and Rapid Fire Cannon, also Runion's using AD more. Armor Pen is worse, as we said there's 10% off that last Whisper now, and the on hit builds are going to be better. They're good versus tanks anyway, especially when Armor Pen has been nerfed. The main item one with this is the Guardian Angel. It's really good for like naturally high damage AD carries who do not have to stack damage to do damage, if that makes sense. Champions like Vayne, for example, Kog'Maw maybe as well, like these have a lot of natural damage packed into their kit, but they struggle to stay alive. It's definitely not going to be optimal for damage. You might not see pro players doing this all the time, but it's still better than before, and it can actually give you a bit more security at least if you have to survive some crazy burst. I honestly want to say this is a good patch for AD carries. Actually, like we have the Guardian Angel to help us if we're facing a really fed damage threat. Like the difference before being that we still get a bit more damage, so it's not pure defense anymore. We have more tanks, so they're not going to burst us as hard. We can like kite rather than getting one shot, which I definitely will take. Crit is much cheaper. It's also better earlier into the game. We should have more burst like into crit builds as well with Shiv. I honestly think Caitlyn will skyrocket this patch along with Vayne. Caitlyn will love the fact that crit is cheaper. She's a lane bully. She gets that gold earlier into the game anyway, so she can just snowball much harder. Vayne has percentage health true damage when champions are stacking armor and health, both of which it bypasses. That is like a dream come true for any Vayne player. You're still going to get your ass kicked, like don't get me wrong, in the lane phase, but as long as you can survive, you're going to be more useful now than before. It's less of a risk, to be honest. With Kog'Maw and Varus as well, it's kind of the same deal as Vayne. Percentage damage, good with rage Blade, and you should be a lot more useful in my opinion. We're still going to have our lane bullies like Lucian and stuff, but crit is going to be a lot better now. Now for support, finally, the only real changes here are the quest system coming in to the items. I think I might release a video about this later today, actually just a quick rundown to be honest. Basically, there are support quests now with support items, and there are 3 different types: the Ancient Coin route, the Spell Thieves one, and the Relic Shield. With the Ancient Coin, enemy minions killed by an ally can drop these coins, right? 20 gold, I think it scales to 30 gold as well, or 8% missing mana. You can upgrade this item once you've collected 650 gold from those coins, and you're going to get a skill point which you can use into any of your abilities. With the Spell Thieves, it's the same gold system when hitting enemy champions, but the upgrade means that you can earn 650, and when you do that, you get move speed burst every time you proc it. With the Relic Shield, it's the same gold when last hitting a minion to somebody nearby, but once you've earned that 650 from it, you gain a shield battery. Now this is a permanent shield that regenerates out of combat. Think of it kind of like a Malphite passive. None of the other item changes really affect supports except these quests, so that's what you really want to look at. Like, you're going to have to make a choice as to which you can stack properly and which thing you want from the quest. So far from like what I've seen, it seems like the Ancient Coin is by far the best though. I would rather take a skill point over a shield or like a move speed burst. Thank you for watching this until the end. Stick around if you enjoyed the video as well, but for now I'll leave you with the robots.